Informative, educational, objective, inclusive, comprehensive. This is Progress Report. Updates and conversations from the Government Information Service.
Good day and welcome to another episode of Progress Report. Sniffle, sniffle. I do not have the star of the show and my co-host with me today, Miss Gleneva Hodge. She's a little bit under the weather today. Get well soon, Gleneva. But of course, like I say over and over, she tells me what to do. So she told me, Ivan, go ahead, move forward. Have the show today because this has been a long time in the making. This has been a long time coming. And the gentlemen that we have on set today, in the studio today, are two gentlemen that I think the entire Anguilla community and even those in the diaspora would be happy hearing from today. And these persons are Mr. Andrew Niles, the newly appointed chairman of the board of directors of the Anguilla Air and Seaport Authority, and Mr. Sherman Williams, the CEO of the Air and Seaport Authority, former CFO. Yes, this man, if you talk Anguilla Air and Seaport Authority, the name has been around for a while. I think you built it from the ground up.
Yeah.
Something close.
Yeah.
How long have you been there?
Started in ASPAR as the finance manager in 2014.
2014.
I began acting as the CEO in August 2016 and was confirmed, I believe. The times have escaped me because the days seem to be so long at times. I believe it's sometime in 2018, if not 2019, but I believe it's sometime in the latter portion of 2018 was confirmed as the CEO and was carrying on the mantle ever since then.
Okay. And before that, what did you do?
Before that, I was at the Financial Services Commission as Regulator 1, and even before that, I was with ASPA briefly as the Peasant Master. And before that, I was somewhere in St. Charles, Missouri, undertaking my undergrad, master's, and then CPA passing. Even though I'm uncertified, but CPA passing, I've been certified public accountant. So that just it in a nutshell in terms of the education and then the professional stanza with ASPO.
So, ladies and gentlemen listening, you see I'm not making this stuff. I don't make this stuff up. What I said, that his resume is long and he's been at it for a while and he has the requisite competencies. You heard it there yourself. Then we have Mr. Andrew Niles, who's no stranger to anybody, I must say. If for those of you that are listening and not watching, he has one of the best beards. I'm just like on the surface. Like I don't see anybody embrace the gray and the black. We call it salt and pepper. I have my gray that's coming in. It comes in very funny, so I can't deal with it. But when I see you, I say, okay, if I could get it like that, that's what it'll be.
That's what it'll be.
But outside of that little sidebar, this gentleman, Mr. Andrew Niles, this man is no stranger to a lot of folks in Anguilla. Just tell us quickly, if you can quickly, because your resume is extensive as well.
It's in a nutshell. Schooling basically was in Jamaica.
Okay.
Moved from Jamaica in 1990. Moved to Anguilla. Started working with Barclays Bank,
Right.
CSR. Then moved over to Scotia. Left Bank of Nova Scotia, went to Anguilla Mortgage Company for a stint. Then left banking, actually was working in the hospitality industry.
Okay.
Then moved back into banking around 1994 thereabout at Scotiabank Anguilla Limited.
Okay.
Had several functions, loans officer, then moved to supervisor, till eventually manager personal banking of the operation, Scotiabank. After that, since in 2012, formed Advanced Caribbean.
Right.
And believe it or not, 2023 will make it 10 years in operation.
That's insane.
That's correct.
That's
10
insane.
years,
10 years,
10 years
in operation at
Yes,
Advanced
yes,
Caribbean.
correct.
A long resume, an excellent track record, if I should say so myself. And again, two gentlemen in the room that I am humbled by the requisite competencies just here. And I'm saying that to say now, ASPA. When you hear about ASPA, for those that don't know what ASPA is or what ASPA does, you'll come to know through this conversation why the brain trust in the room is very important with exactly what's happening right now in ASPA. When you look across the island, the development, the movement, everything that we actually do internally pass through the sieve of ASPA, if I can call it that. Because ASPA controls access to all our ports. Is that correct?
Yes.
So when I say the airport, Blowing Point, Road Bay, and even our jetties, correct?
Yes.
All right. So, in a nutshell, tell us what ASPA does.
Okay, Mr. Connor, let me just say firstly, let me say healthy good morning to all of the managers and staff of ASPA. This is a platform usually given to us. Sometimes we would prefer to be able to do more often, but the demands of the job sometimes don't always lend to the time. But I'm extremely appreciative to all of the management and staff that keeps the ASPA thriving and going. There are challenges. Some of them are outside of us. Some of them are internal. But I would just want to extend gratitude to the entire ASPA staff. From the airport, Blowing Point, Road Bay, all of the staff members, thank you very much for what you all continue to do and put up with Sherman Williams as the leader of the organization. But to answer your question, though, succinctly, though, Mr. Connor, there's a lot of misconceptions about the work that ASPA does. Section 2.1 of the ASPA Act defines ASPA as having the exclusive rights to manage the prescribed ports of Anguilla. I say prescribed ports. It was interesting when you said some of the piers, because some of the piers is what we call unprescribed. The prescribed ports, according to the Act, are Blowing Point Ferry Terminal, the Road Bay Cargo Port, and the airport. We sort of squeezed Carito Port, but Carito not actually a port. But what we do now is we're working with the UK Department for Transport to try to have the license of Silent Delta to now fall under ASPA's remit in terms of the quality assurance or the internal audit, if you will. And then, of course, the Seoul airport. So there's the Act defines certain parameters around what defines a port. So immigration and customs are key features for every port. And what we call the unprescribed ports would be those like that you will see Crocus Bay by Lloyd's facility, Island Harbor, the one over in the old Forest port. So those are what we call, even the Cove. Those are what we call the unprescribed ports, and those are handled directly under the ministry. Of course, ASPA lends a helping hand to anybody. So if there's any assistance that's needed to see that we have vessels going coastwise, we also try to administer and make sure that we have that support, because ultimately, even though we may not be within the port, it's still within Anguilla, and we lend a helping hand, to the agents of immigration, customs, just as a whole border patrol activity. The key functions for ASPA, just like it is, safety and security is paramount. Safety and security is paramount. What we are seeing now, though, which is a good thing for Anguilla, is that we are seeing that the challenge for the ASPA is now space and resources. So what we are trying to do is to try to find that nice blend of the human resource need with the technology, that we can ease persons, we can ease cargo, we can streamline these services that used to be archaic and traditional and mundane, and we try to have them a bit more robust so that persons don't have to feel that anxiety of coming and doing business within our ports with the different agencies, including ASPA.
So now that you say that, I want to put a pin here, because I often tell people, like, I think Road Bay is a stress test. For bringing in cargo, your personal stuff. I think in some instances it may be a little bit cost prohibitive to use what do you call those folks again? Broker.
Brokers and agents, yes.
Brokers and agents all the time. But I need persons to understand who feel like me that road base and stress test that it is a cargo facility. It's where the majority of our trade come in. So when you're going in there as a sole person, bringing in a box with 2 sweaters, if you're not getting, quote unquote, the feel that you may want, and I had to talk to myself, you got to understand that you're in a place that handles containers, handles a lot of perishables and things come through there that keeps the island moving.
In other words, you're not a priority.
All right, you said it and I didn't
Right,
because
you're
I
not a
didn't want to
priority,
say
no.
it.
But even though you're not a priority, the service is still given to you.
And that's
to
a
clear,
fact.
all
That's
right?
a fact.
But the fact of the matter is, it is our major port for cargo into the island to supply
Supermarkets, government.
hotels, government, everything else. So yes,
Fuel
yes.
come through there sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like everything comes through there, and this is the gravity of this is what I want people to get an understanding of. That is no small feat what the board of ASPA does, and ASPA as a body in general, down to the security officers who may be under your remit, the officers at the ports, like. There's a lot weighing on these persons because we had Mr. Kendall Richardson on the show. He's quality assurance at the
Aviation and Maritime.
Aviation and Maritime through the Ministry of Infrastructure, and one of the things that he touched on was the risk involved. Terrorism, 911, everything kind of, I think, should have put certain things in people's heads. If you want to cripple this country, you don't have to do it internally. If somebody decides they're upset with the UK, we're a colony, we're an overseas territory, the UK, they want to bring some trouble, they can literally just attack the ports.
Yeah.
So holistically, to some extent, measures of national security fall in your lap
Yeah.
at some sort of consideration, correct?
Well said and well put. The key that we like to use, well, at least I like to use in ASPA is balance. There has to be a healthy balance between your mandates, especially not only local or regional, but internationally.
Okay.
There's an international mandate because these are quote-unquote international ports. We have vessels that go to international ports, whether it be some person would see this going to St. Martin, but that's an
international port,
that's an
yeah.
international voyage, whether it be via maritime or whether it be via the aerodrome.
Aircraft, yeah.
So there has to be certain elements that you have to take into consideration. Now, this is my term. I always term that our ports in Angola are what I call community ports because they fall within certain communities. Roadway Port is fall within the center ground community. Blind Point Port falls within Blind Point. Airport again falls right there between the Valley and George Hill and Warwick and so on, so on and so forth. So
I want
it has-
George Hill to have something.
yeah. So there are certain elements that sort of make us a bit unique. Despite having even the fencing up, we do understand that there is a traditional component as well too with coming to the port to do business. Right now there's a strong push to have customers when they come to the port. There's a preference. There's a strong preference that I'm trying to see if I can finagle with the overseas regulatory body in terms of how do we marry a person like yourself who may not be a feature of the port, but you import something for your own consumption.
Right.
How do we say to Mr. Khanna, I think that it's best serving for the port if your agent or broker can undertake that service for you, because the agent or broker is what we call known to the port,
Right.
and he or she would have a permanent pass,
Right.
as opposed to yourself who may have a visitor's pass, who may need to
Exactly.
be escorted to eliminate and mitigate against some of that risk that someone who is not colloquial and not local
Yeah.
may say, but Mr. Khanna can pose a threat. And we would say, no, we grew up with Mr. Khanna, we know him, and so on and so forth. But for
That's not what your regulators
no,
say.
No.
For the international guys,
Uh-huh.
they see you as an unprescribed person coming to the port, a nondescript person, and we need to go through a bit more vetting process. We are trying to say, hey, at the port, our risk of Mr. Khanna is seemingly low. We don't need to go through the entire vetting. But they are saying, Mr. Williams, ultimately, the risk profile, how do you know for sure?
If I jump in just in here just a little. You touched on the aspect of safety. And safety is not just the business of the country. Safety is coming from internationally.
Right.
And what we intend to do at the ASPA is to ensure that we kind of come in line with what's happening internationally.
Yes.
So that when the international bodies and organizations start to filter down certain regulations, that we already ahead of the game.
Yes.
We have the perfect opportunity now with the new facility at Blowing Point to be able to put certain procedures in place. Because of the new facility, it can't be business as usual, business unusual. But again, bearing in mind what the CEO said a while ago, because we're in a particular community, to understand the community elements and try to marry them with the advancements that we're trying to put in place with all the ports, as a matter of fact.
Know that you mentioned that, you touched on something that I'm hoping we can get a little bit of conversation with the Minister for Infrastructure at some point. But when you look at the facilities that we have, they were built for community. Let's be honest, because now when you talk about those things, I've done some training. I've had a pass for the airport and stuff when I've done some work. I worked with Angulair Services, and I went through the training, so I know how you operate in the restricted areas and those type of things. When you get to Road Bay Port now, literally when you pass that gate, it would have been a different story if you were at the airport. You were not getting to certain areas. Even if you try to clear from customs at the airport, you see you have an area where
you could not pass.
Exactly. Looking ahead now, we have to build a new port, hopefully, at Road Bay with the new wharf, the new pier and everything. Is it in the plans, or is it in the outlook? Is it part of the conversation now that, okay, we may not be able to stop persons clearing their packages individually who don't have that relationship with the port, but having an area where they can actually come in and not be in the restricted area or in areas that pose so much of a threat?
Excellent question, Mr. Khan, again. What we saw, especially when we come to travel and so on and so forth, is that because of the elements of 9/11, we would have seen a lot of heavy regulation would have gone to aviation in terms of not having something so catastrophic happen again. So the airport was always out in front. What we are seeing now in other territories, especially internationally, we are seeing our push now to bring sea activity, maritime activity, up to some level of standard with the same safety and security in place. What we have now, though, especially when in Road Bay, and this is an excellent opportunity to explain, what we are hoping for is to move all of the hard and fast stuff to the new jetty, while we allow for the LCL, loose container loads, to be done at the quote-unquote current or older jetty. So that way that we could sort of separate the hard and fast cargo of the trucks and the containers and all the steel and the lumber and the plywood and the aggregate and all that kind of stuff over on the new platform, and allow, because of the warehouse situation, allow the individual customer to come and be a bit more in a more serene environment, if I could use that word, in ports, a more serene and comfortable environment while they clear his or her, while he or she clears his or her packages from that current area. So the approach will be a bit more softer in terms of how you would come into interface with the customs department and ASPAM employees for clearing the individual packages.
I'm going to tell you something that happened to me. I can talk about myself before somebody else talk about me.
Sure.
So I always got my earphones in my ear when I'm walking, when I'm doing things. And I forgot. Like, I literally came in, I took out one, I gave my ID, I got my temporary pass, and I put my earphone in, and I'm going back walking. And then somebody had to stop me because they were trying to get my attention. A lot of people don't realize when they come into the port, it's not just willy-nilly. There's activity going on there over and over. And literally truck coming my way and I'm not paying attention. So I could understand the separation from what you're talking about here.
So if you could remember then in your experience, there's some yellow lines at the port that the pedestrian should walk to, because we do understand that there's trucks operating. The land down there is actually only 1 acre, but because of the buildings now, that acre now is almost like probably like a quarter acre in terms of operational space.
That's true.
So you got container trucks, you got cars, and you got different stuff operating, especially the forklifts.
Yes.
So what we were hoping to have, because I've seen this in other ports and we're hoping to infuse in Anguilla, is that when persons come in, they have to, individual customers, we would encourage persons to walk with a highlighted vest. If not, we would have to provide one for you at the port. I know some persons don't like to put on the hard hats, but if you go in other ports, you
have to wear them.
Especially as soon as you enter the gate, you put on your hard hat because there is the risk of anything happening is forever prevalent. So that's what I'm saying, that the hope is that now that we have this magnificent facility over on the southern side, to maximize that, we have tried to move all of the different hard and fast stuff over on that side, whilst just keeping the LCL, Mr. Ray, Captain Chrissy, those cargo types
This loose
over,
cargo,
the loose cargo on the current facility.
Would that kind of lengthen the life of the pier there as well? Because I know that.
Indeed.
Because those then the bigger
Right,
ships
the
are
traffic-
done.
the
Yeah.
traffic
So
is not as
the
heavy.
strain,
Yeah.
because the jet, as a matter of fact, the jetty that was currently there has really surpassed the usefulness in
Yes.
terms of the current cargo type and the current cargo vessels.
That is
There's
good.
there's a distinction called load on, load off,
Yeah.
and roll on, roll off.
Yeah.
So that vessel would have been built back then for the vessels at the time would have the crane stuff over, so the load on, load off. Now vessels are coming over the ramp to just go now into the nice jetty, called roll on, roll off. Easier, quicker, simpler, more efficient.
Yeah.
So that's why the new jetty was needed, and it has served us well over the past couple of months that we have sort of had a softer opening for allowing vessels to come across there. So we put in temporary measures, and we hope that once the upland developments are complete,
Yeah.
we can move it now to more of a 24/7 once you have submitted documentation to have it fully staffed, fully functional.
Okay. So you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, in addition to the hardware, if you want to say this, there's the software, the technology
That's
to
what
be
I was
also
going to say.
implemented to also streamline the process of clearing cargo,
Yes.
personally as well as commercially.
Yes.
Because if we don't have the technology in place, the operation is still going to
Exactly.
be
Yes.
fumbled up as it was before. So the technology along with the infrastructure is going to lend itself to a much more streamlined and up-to-date facility.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Okay.
If I could add to the technology, we are hopeful. We have a technician that we have sort of informally brought on board. I task him with those two components. Firstly, with
So
the
wait, not to cut you off. Couple guests back stole persons from Dice. You didn't steal nobody from Dice, right?
he's a farmer employee at Dice.
Dice
The answer would be no.
So he's a
No
farmer.
longer at
Sorry,
Dice.
he's a farmer colleague of Dice. Then let me say that he's a farmer colleague of Dice. We have tasked him because of the Black Panther Ferry Terminal and that demand. Firstly, we have tasked him with moving to a passenger online platform. To move passengers, so you could probably stay from home, or you would have to rush through the back road there and Jeremiah Highway and say,
Yeah.
book me. You could just go on to the platform and book. So that's the hope. Baggage reconciliation, the board and passing, so on and so
Listen,
forth.
sorry, stop. You just said something that I think everybody's gonna celebrate as far, and I'm gonna clap. Because including me, does Carl when you're on that Jeremiah Highway speeding down,
Yeah.
put my name on the board, please.
Yeah.
Put my name, so you're gonna stop that.
Yes.
Yeah.
The plan is to stop that.
Plan
Yes,
is-
yes. The
yes.
plan is to stop
And
that.
you're saying that you are in the works of creating an online booking platform.
Yes, sir.
You go and you put in your information for the boat you want to
Yes, sir.
travel on, because the boats travel by schedule.
Yes, sir.
And this is the Marigo Fairway. Speaking of road,
yeah.
that
Traditional
is
ferry.
great.
The traditional
You
ferry.
listen. You could say nothing else for the rest of the day, and
Traditional ferry.
Williams would celebrate that.
Well,
So-
yeah.
Yeah, so that's a hope to have that done, and the reason why we sort of put a little bit of a pause on the roadway was because we understand that we want to have this to sort of be the lead in,
Okay.
the lead into. So we're dealing with the passenger interface first, and then the hope is to also have a similar structure for the tracking of cargo. So from the moment that your cargo comes into the port,
Right.
and it's procured by the port, and it's
Right.
released from the port, we will have a system as well too, like a RFID sort of machine. So you track the cargo from the time it comes in to the time it leaves the port. So that way, persons like yourself or the agent or the broker could expedite, and then
Yeah.
you would have the comfort of sitting at home and having your cargo delivered to you, as opposed to having the experience of having to
Man, this is
visit the port.
amazing.
Yeah.
So we're hoping to have that done in 2023. Like I said, it's the passenger side is going a bit lightning quicker just because of the element of when the facility opens.
Right.
You want to have that. We have already had our discussion with Friends St. Martin, and they too are pioneering something similar. So we're hoping to marry the two technologies. In the tech side from Anguilla and the tech side from St. Martin have also been on a conference call, and all signs are pointing that this is workable.
So you're going to be able to pay online everything.
We are trying to hold back on the paying just because of the fact that we don't collect the fees for the ferry. The ferry don't collect for us.
Right.
So the banking could be a little tricky.
Yeah.
So we are hoping to see now. So for the first phase though, is roll the software out first.
Yeah.
And then let's deal with how we deal with the payments once that platform is up and running.
That's an excellent idea.
So that the state-of-the-art facility will have a state-of-the-art interface. And I'm sure I know you deal with the guests that are coming in, and in your conversations with them, they make suggestions. They say, why don't do this, why don't do that. So it makes the experience when persons are traveling from St. Martin over to Anguilla seamless.
Yes.
And that's awesome, and I think that's the way we need to go. Listen, I don't want to use the term stress test again, but I've been there. I tip my hat to you for what you've had to deal with over the last 2-3 years in terms of movement. Well, more than 3 years. Since 2017 when we last report, in terms of movement through that facility. I think there was a bit of ingenuity, a bit of genius that identified a place quickly because we can't stop the movement.
Correct.
But I know it had to be the most challenging thing that you've probably dealt with in terms of the numbers that moves through that little space, the expectations, because it's going and coming, and then on top of that having to meet international regulations and having to function within the audit function of yourself to make sure that we are within what our regulators want.
Correct.
Now you're moving towards a new facility in Blowing Point. You're moving towards being more efficient in terms of like your online offerings, your booking, and those type of things. What now would you say? And this is for you first, Mr. Niles, just coming in, and then you, Mr. Williams. The overarching, not the vision that's on paper, not the mission that's on paper, but where does ASPA see itself going right now, and what is ASPA going to look like in 2025, 2026, 2 years from now, and then 2030?
That's pretty broad base, but just before I respond to the question, in addition to streamlining the process regarding passenger movement, it is going to be critical in all of that for the ferry boat operators and the charter boat operators to be able to move on time.
Yes.
The traditional way, you call and you're waiting on somebody, waiting on somebody. You can understand that, but if we're going to create the experience and be able to increase scheduling of boats, etc., on-time movement has to be key. So I just wanted to mention that, in addition to
I think you made more people happy again. The complaints that has been there, and I noticed in the recent schedule that was sent out, you said cut-off time and then departure time, because a lot of people don't take that into consideration. That's why planes have boarding times.
Yes.
And for a long time we didn't operate like that with our vessels too. They would advertise 12:30 boat, but the boat leaves 12:40, 12:45 on average.
Yes.
I think being able to communicate now, like, okay, there's a cutoff time for your boat. You have to pass through security. You have to board the vessel. They have to toot their horn, radio in, and then leave. There's a process, and a lot of people miss that process. And now you're saying that ASPA, one of the main things ASPA is going to do, rolling out immediately, is look at the efficiency in controlling that process.
Yes, sir.
That's awesome.
That has to be paramount. Again, too, just to stick a pin regarding staffing as well, too. Back, a year and a half, it's been real challenging for the staff.
Right.
So, as part of the development with ASPA, will include development of the staff, their roles and responsibilities, giving them opportunity to develop and grow.
Nice.
So going back to the question with the vision for ASPA, etc. Anguilla is moving now 21st century, 22nd century. as well, and we cannot be, we cannot have the mindset, this is what it used to be. We want, we're comfortable with this. We don't want to move forward. But the only way to have Anguilla develop and move forward and keep abreast of what's happening internationally is for us to develop.
Facts.
Sometimes that development may be a little uncomfortable, but in the long run and the overall scheme of things, we need to do this.
Right.
There's development at the airport that's going to happen. Drawing Point Road B is going to happen.
Yes.
The role of ASPA, I see, is to be able to ensure that all stakeholders, government, citizens, persons who interface with ASPA, have an experience that is not only comfortable but rewarding.
Right.
Rewarding because we're now talking economics.
Right.
So it's to be able to place ASPA in a position that, ASPA is contributing to the financial and economic development of Anguilla overall.
Excellent. And now that you mentioned the financial and economics contribution to Anguilla, ASPA is a revenue generating body.
Yes.
I don't want persons to feel like government just pay ASPA, CEO and the board for oversight. No, ASPA generates revenue. How does ASPA generate revenue?
I'm glad that you clear up that misconception, because there oftentimes, and I've heard it even with some of my colleagues, even in the various ministries and even private sectors, in terms of, ASPA is being subsidized by the GOA. On the contrary, ASPA is supposed to be self-financing and self-sufficient. There are times, especially when we had Hurricane Irma and of course the pandemic, where you may have to lean on your quote-unquote parent company for financial assistance, just because there are matters that threaten ASPA that are not borne by ASPA, not borne by the government of Angola, not borne even by Angola. It's just that you have these international shocks that may happen. But for the most part, ASPA is self-sufficient. But again, like I say, especially when it comes to infrastructural and capital projects, we would have to lend. Our coffers are not as deep, and we haven't been in existence that long to build up such a large-scale reserves. Even though, but the beauty is for ASPA right now is that we have seen where, and I remember this term being raised a few years ago when we had Hurricane Irma, never waste a crisis. And I'm glad that Anguilla never wasted the crisis of Hurricane Irma in terms of not only building back what we thought we would have needed, but building back better in terms of where we see not only ASPA, but where we see Anguilla headed to. That was very smart and ingenious. So now the aim now is to have now the demand push us now and exacerbate that supply of the infrastructure that we have. That's where ASPA's true function is going to lie, that we have the capacity now for larger aircrafts, longer travel aircraft, capacity for additional ferries and other voyages coming to and from our ports, and also the capacity and the comfort of having the passengers experience what they used to term as an international voyage, and person would always tell you, well, I see this in Juliana, I see this in this place, I see this in Dominica, I see this, how come you don't have it here? So the once we get all of the different components together for airport and seaport, the customer is still going to experience that world travel experience that they have gotten in other destinations. They will get it here. But most importantly for the ASPA too, going back to what the chairman said, is that we want to make sure that our key resource, which is the human resource, that they too have the opportunities to grow with the organization. You don't want the organization to grow beyond the key resource and then they feel a bit recluse and they feel a bit left out. We want to be able to start to have the employees be part of the shaping of ASPA so that they could be proud and they could beat their chest up and say, look how far we have traveled. And look where we want to end up.
And I know when you say that you say that collectively and inclusively, because some of the forklift operators, they are staff of ASPA.
Yes.
You understand? The person when you go to a road bay again and you're checking your stuff, like I get confession again. I get annoyed with the process, but I have an appreciation for it because I know why those checks and balances are in place. I just don't like to be in the sun. So
if I come as a comment, let me just to give the audience a sort of a spectrum of where the ASPA is right now employee-wise in the different segments. If I can have 2 seconds. ASPA currently right now at last checked headcount was about 171 employees.
Stop right there. Say it again.
171 employees.
The government employs how many persons?
I think the government is probably a little over 1,000.
1,000.
Yeah.
So ASPA has about 10%.
10%, yes.
Let's just put that in perspective. Okay, carry on.
Well, in perspective, we, outside of the Health Authority, we are the largest employer as a statutory body. So also in the Health Authority have persons who are on contract.
Right.
All of our staff are full-time employees.
And local.
Well, for
Say
the
that,
most
say
part.
that again.
And local.
Okay.
So all of our staff are full-time employees. Let me just go and forgive me, Jabari and Rashima, if I forget any segments, but let's just start with the airport first. So the airport, you have security, ATC, MET, maintenance, custodians, AIS departments. So we got 6 of those
6 departments at the airport.
Just at the airport alone. Forgive me again, Jason and Roadbay in Kenesha, but you have ports, maintenance, custodians, security.
Waiters, drivers,
Forklift operators. So operators.
5.
So that's 5. Forgive me, Dale in Missasso and Blind Point. Port officers, security, custodian, maintenance, cashiers. So sorry, I forgot cashiers. All of the ports.
All the ports have
all the
cashiers.
ports,
So
cashiers.
7 and 6.
Yeah, 7, 6, and about another 6 in the port. So you got about, that's 19. So that's 19 divisions at the ports. And then, of course, you got the corporate office, which is housed at the Philippi Commercial Complex. That has the human resources, the finance department, finance and accounting departments, clerical. Oh, I also forgot the ID officers. So each of the ports has ID officers. So that persons who have the permanent IDs, there's no need for you to be going all about Angola looking for your ID. You go straight to the port and they print your ID and they give you your ID. Once you have conducted those passes and you do the same test that you did to get your ID, the security awareness training, you do that training. If you're successful, you get your ID. So ASPA is sometimes persons see the ASPA in one light. And again, all of our ports, just for clarity, all of the ports are 24/7 by international mandates.
Yes.
So all of the ports will always have someone working at the port. And that's regardless of hurricane, weather event, pandemic, other natural disaster, anything that even happens with a local, regional, internationally. The ports has to be manned 24/7.
And I need for folks to understand what you're saying, because when I spoke about the gravity and what's in your hands as chairman of the board and the CEO of ASPA, people have to understand, and I am understanding, and that's why I'm a bit more patient, that you have to be a little bit more patient and extend a little grace, because there's a lot that happens at ASPA. It's not literally me just going to a port and leaving.
Yeah. Well, let me just frame this here, because this happens quite often, especially the persons who are patrons of Roadway Port. Mr. Connor, you described the situation with you earlier. Let's say, for example, if that officer who at the checkpoint didn't vet you properly, and an episode happened in the RAPF, the Royal Angola Police Force has to be brought in, and they want to be able to tell who, not only who was in the port, but who would have vetted you coming into the port. That information becomes no part of investigation, and that is crucial, and that has far-reaching arms not only implications not only locally, but regionally and internationally as well.
The liability.
Yeah, and the liability for ASPA is vast, because if you would have done something to our property, one of our patrons' property, a vessel that traverses from here to another international port, we have said based on our ISPS, and ISPS is broad, so we don't want to get into that right now.
What does ISPS mean?
International Shipping and Port Facilities.
Okay.
Right? And the ASPA as well as other ports. So what it basically says is that our operations at our port will not endanger a vessel leaving from our port and going to your port.
That's risk.
So,
that's liability.
So that's why
that you have to resolve.
So just again to give the audience, some persons would say, and I've heard this before, why are you scanning me going, okay, you protecting St. Martin? No, we're not protecting St. Martin. What we are doing is complying with the international mandate of our ISPS facility to say to St. Martin that any vessel that leaves from our shores would not have any adverse risk to your shows, and vice versa. St. Martin should be doing the same thing too, and saying anything that is coming to our shows would not adversely affect the vessel that just left your facility coming into our shows. If that is done, our mandate is to respond to our regulator, British, and then have our regulator now fight that case for the French regulator on that EU side.
Okay.
So just to add to that as well too, so that the procedures that are going to be put in place, or should be, is not only coming from ASPO.
Right.
We're vehicles
Yes.
for
Indeed.
international standards.
Yes.
And trade.
So, and trade, exactly. So that some persons may feel that, ASPA, the board or the chairman or the CEO is putting this in place because whatever. That's not the case.
Yes.
It is not the case. It's because we are bounded and we have an obligation to the international community to be able to assert ourselves that we are with you, and also being able to assist in the prevention of terrorism.
So I'm happy that you touched that again, and I'm gonna talk about my experience again. One time I went to Road B. I know better. I should do better, but I gave I was literally testing the officer. I gave the officer my social security card as an ID. She put it back to me. She said she cannot accept that. I said, why you cannot accept that? She said it does not have an expiration date.
Yes.
To those listening, what's important about the expiration date on an ID?
Well, we have had discussion with the chief of port security, and the concern is just like every other ID that you have, whether it be again local, regional, international, there has to be some parameters set on the acceptance of what is acceptable on an ID.
Right.
Usually, ID has, of course, the person's facial features, name and last name and so on. So, but what is also important too is that ID too is subject to expire,
Right.
so that it goes back to another body to say, yes, this is in fact Mr. Ivan Khanna. His features hasn't changed, so on and so
Exactly.
forth. So the key with the social security ID, because it doesn't have expiration date, is that there's no third party vouching, if I
Check,
could say.
yeah.
There's no third party vouching to say, yes, this is Mr. Khanna. He has not changed from since he was a little boy. He hasn't changed in the past 5 years, 10 years. And again, it goes back to risk. So here it is that the episode happens, and the officer is now using your ID that you would have given him. But ID
Yep.
shows you back when you was in high school, or without glasses, or
Exactly.
without a mustache, or without a beard, or something,
'cause-
something that is not current. Because even passports, even passports has expiration date for the same reason. Again, this is not to make someone's life tougher.
Yeah.
I take a point though in terms of that maybe sometimes, and it's not done with any sort of maliciousness, but sometimes on this platform probably we should come back more sooner to explain
that's what we're
why,
here for.
to explain why certain things are the way they are, so that the customer don't feel disenfranchised, or the customer don't feel put off by going to the port, but they will understand the reason why the officer is asking you for these things. So it will make it a bit more symbiotic, that between the interface between the user and the border patrol person, which is the ASPO, can be a bit more how can I say this? A bit more friendlier, in more agreement, and so on and so forth. But that's the reason. That's the reason.
And just again to extend the whole ID issue, it's all part of compliance.
Right.
And when customers of various institutions, particularly financial, will be subject to compliance and being able, having to produce identification. They go in, they have to present an ID. And again, because that expiration date on there is key as well too. Again, I share an experience with you. So I made a certain application to a government office, and the application required me to produce a passport size picture. So, okay, fine, no problem. I said, man, I don't have the time to take a passport picture right now. So I had one that I took maybe about a year and a half ago.
Without the
And I presented it, and it was presented without the beard. The person that took the pictures looked at it, kind of hesitated, looked at it again, realized it was myself. The application went further on, and I got a call. I said, Mr. Niles, the photos that you presented are unacceptable. because now I
Yeah.
have a beard.
Yeah.
And to the point that the CEO raised is that your features could have changed. So expand that to under the umbrella of terrorism.
Mm-hmm.
So that particular individual walked through, presented an ID. International community comes to us and said, okay, fine, what information do you have to prove that this individual walked through?
Yeah.
And we presented an expired, outdated ID. Where does that leave us?
You observing some risk there?
No, exactly. So it's not just for us
Right.
personally, but collectively as a country, all organizations, at all levels, is to protect Anguilla.
And that is the fact right there,
Yeah.
because I think people are coming to an understanding that we aren't a village anymore.
No.
Like,
As a matter of fact, let me give the audience too, because we do encourage persons to have a permanent, what we call a permanent pass, not the visitor's pass that you would probably get. Section 7 of the Seaports Regulation says that a person who habitually enters the port or do business in and around the port should have a permanent pass. They can go on to anguillaports.com. The application form for the seaports is there for a permanent ID, whether it be for Blind Point or Road Bay. You go in and you fill the form and you find any of the ports and you submit. We do require you to have not only a picture, but a recent picture. We also require you to have a police record, and the police record has to be clean. There are certain what we will call disqualifying factors, which I wouldn't get into here, but there are certain disqualifying factors if you have those on your criminal record. Examples would be if you're involved in any kind of espionage, or arms, or ammunition, crimes against men, crimes where you're involved in cannabis and other controlled substances. Of course, you know those things because we're international.
Yeah.
You cannot have a permanent pass. But if you're a person who is of upstanding character, yes, and you do business at a port more than the usual person,
Right.
please go and fill the form. We will try our best to accommodate you and get a permanent pass. That way you wouldn't see Mr. Connor is there sitting waiting for his pass, while Mr. Williams passes him and just shows his pass and the person's records name and number, and then he goes in. You wondering, but why I gotta sit down here and wait and think? And
because I'm black.
It's because the risk of vetting for the
Yes.
person with a permanent ID is a bit low because he's known, he's already in our database.
Right.
You are sort of
Unknown.
new and unknown, so your risk of course is already elevated. So we have to put you through a more stringent process.
Yeah, that is excellent. But what's striking is, and I think it's just how we operate locally. Persons will go to the airport and fall in line. They'll go to Blowing Point and want to act differently. They'll go to Road Bay and it's a totally different thing.
Let me just make a joke to make a point. Where in Marigot does it say to stand behind this line, either in French or in English?
I don't see it.
You don't see it. There's no sign that
But
says
we
that.
do it though.
But we do it just because
The gendarme never
yeah.
beat us up.
we do it instinctively because it's just in our mind. So like I
Afraid of
said,
gendarme.
so what I said earlier, those are the sort of feelings that we want to have. Now again, we're not looking for ASPA to be any sort of aggressive. What we want to have though is have the infrastructure and have the technology and have the personnel to dictate that behavior. So that behavior become now more customary as opposed to it being forced. So we want to have the infrastructure, we want to have the technology, we want to have the persons involved so that we can say, hey, this is Anguilla traditionally, this is Anguilla now in the new world.
And perfect point to bring this in as well too, because our customers are not just, I put in quote Anguillian, but we have international customers.
100%.
And when we have certain standards in place, it makes it easier for persons to come and do business with us. So
That is
it's
true.
not just making sure that the process is working fine, but we're creating an opportunity for business development within our ports.
That is true, and I'm happy that you said that because nobody knows what the regulators look like.
No.
None. That's
None.
correct.
No.
They
That's
could
correct.
come here on vacation,
that's
pass
correct.
through,
No.
tip.
You know,
Then we
and-
get shut down and we're upset and we say it's this person's fault and Sherman didn't know what he was doing and Andrew just gone on the board and mess
well-
up things. They would have the story to carry on.
But what happens is that Mr. Williams will get blamed, and the board will get blamed.
Uh-huh.
Right? So again, you mentioned something earlier in your presentation regarding how ASPA operates, etc. And one of the things I believe most persons do not understand is that with organizations that have a board, the board has ultimate responsibility for the particular organization.
Right.
So decisions that are made are not being made on a personal basis. They're being made on a corporate basis for the overall survival and protection of the organization.
And just to add to that, it's not to target an individual or a group.
No, it is not.
It's to comply.
Correct.
It's to make sure you secure. It's to make sure that the overarching goals, objectives, vision, mission
Correct.
is met. What a lot of people probably miss, though, and you touched on it earlier, and I started to see somewhat of a web. There's a lot of functions happening at ports which ASPA is responsible for that have other reporting guidelines and regulatory bodies and stuff as well. Immigration, customs,
police.
American Airlines just coming, so it's TSA and other foreign bodies that you're dealing with.
Right.
And now that we mentioned that, because we're kind of winding down, let's segue into how is ASPA prepared now. Now we have American Airlines, direct flights to Miami. International was St. Martin, St. Thomas, other areas.
Right.
But we have an increased passenger movement at the airport, which I'm happy in the upcoming weeks we're going to see some development and stuff happening there because we need to bring that to standard too. But while that is happening, the movement doesn't stop. How is ASPA preparing to deal with that? Because the construction is through Maiku, but the operation of the port is still through ASPA. How are you dealing with that?
Well, here's the side of good news for ASPA. None of the stakeholders, whether it be the local, whether our local airlines or international, now that we have the big players will be American Airlines for sure, Aurora, Silver. The beauty for ASPA is that none of these bodies here are unaccustomed to change.
Perfect.
Communication with them has been ongoing and robust. None of them are negative reaction to change. They are already accustomed to being in this aura of change. So for example, it used to be pie in the sky when persons would have been hearing about American Airlines coming to Angola. I'm proud of the fact that I'm not sure if you were there, but the room that we transformed to sort of house American Airlines.
Right.
In one night, the walls went from brick red
I was there.
to all white.
I was there.
That to me was an amazing process. Again, the beauty that we, I don't want to call persons' names, but we have had impeccable communication with our American colleagues. We have impeccable communication with our Angola colleagues to the point that they are also locked in step unison with the changes that has occurred and the changes that will occur. You mentioned Kendall before. Kendall has been excellent in being able to bridge those gaps as well too, but not only holding the ASPA accountable, but also driving some of these processes with the ministry while keeping ASPA on the loop for what has been transpiring, what will transpire, and then ASPA in turn have been driving that to the different stakeholders. So persons would not be saying, well, hey, how come we wasn't part of this? How come I didn't know this? How come we didn't do this? And so on and so forth. But he has been excellent in trying to give persons a listening ear at least. Now, sometimes in Angola, we are Angolians. Persons believe that because I give you a chance to speak, that means I have to agree with what you
that don't happen
put forward. But at least the platform has been there, so persons are going to be eased to the process. And again, this is a highly regulated industry.
That's
so if a
say
rock,
that again.
highly regulated industry, any stone, pebble, block, brick that moves at the aerodrome, we have to inform not only the local persons who are there, or the persons who operate at the airport, or a regulator also have to be lockstep.
Yeah, because when you come in terms of your audits, these are things that are either flagged in your audits or need to show up because I don't think people understand. Well, I didn't think people understood. I should say that. Some understand it now. Once you pass a certain point on an airport, you are literally dealing with international concerns.
Yes. So let me elaborate. In. So at the airport, you have audits for security. There's a separate audit to aerodrome, and aerodrome is where the infrastructure part will come down. So persons would have seen speed bumps. I'm still working on a video, by the way, to give persons an ease in terms of how we expect the parking and stuff should go. But the speed bumps and the control arms, so on and so forth. So that's under the aerodrome audit. We also have the meteorology. That's for the weather and the collection of data for rain and so on and so forth. And then we also have the ATC, the air traffic control. So just in a year, you have 4 different audits. So you can imagine Jabari and Rashima and Kendall and other persons who make the engines go operationally, that they have to be on top of it as well, because one audit could put you back into where we were in 2016. 2016
And
September.
where were we in 2016?
2016 September, the regulator would have, August 2016, the regulator would have seen that there were certain inconsistencies, and not only in terms of our robustness, but our culture wasn't conducive to one that they have confidence in addressing findings in a systemic way. We were, for lack of a better word, we were lax. We were complacent. We were. This is Angola.
I want you to use the word community.
Yeah, we were community. We were. Well, this is not a high risk because we don't have Arafat or some other name coming through here that will do whatever. And we had to take a hard punch in the gut and a hard slap in the face, based on our doing, to put the airport back to where it is now, and where we continue to push forward. So the communication between us and the regulator has been excellent. We made certain human resource and technology changes. X-ray machines, newer. You would have seen the facility had more light and so on and so forth. So all these things come into play that maybe the ordinary citizen may not see. All they may see, well, hey, someone coming through here and telling me don't do this and don't do that. But again, it's not to impede on what they're doing, but it's to try to ensure that we continue to have the dance going on, so that Anguilla could be the ultimate beneficiary. Because again, you asked a question earlier about ASPA and revenues. ASPA is a conduit. That's what the conduit. We are there on behalf of the government of Angola to ensure that the end user, the stakeholders, they have the quote-unquote reap the benefits. More persons in the taxi division, more persons in the concierge, more persons at the hotels, villas, restaurants, private sector, and so on and so forth. Those are ultimate beneficiaries. We are a conduit to ensure that persons are coming through us as safe and secure and efficient as possible. That's the main function of ASPA.
Right. That is awesome. As we wrap up, I'm gonna give you both a moment to just say any parting words to the audience. But it would be remiss of me if I didn't do what the star of the show, Gleneva, has asked me to do, and that is extend an open invitation for you to come back at any time, because I know we haven't even touched the meat of the matter. If we're being honest, we talked about some stuff, but we haven't touched the meat of the matter. Very, very on the surface, but it was good. But you touched on something I just wanted to kind of caveat or dovetail. I want persons to understand that the regulations, the compliance mechanisms, that guys, what happens at the Clayton J. Lloyd International Airport, they may not be the same, but mirrored are different. There are regulations and compliance mechanisms that's going to guide how we operate at Road Bay moving forward, and even at Blowing Point moving forward. And then we're not going to be able to touch on it now, but when you talk about the unsubscribed ports,
well,
that's a different story.
Well, for ASPA, again, like I say, even though it's one ASPA, there's three or four other in the Eastern Caribbean, at least, or in the Caribbean, at least, there's, I think, 3 or 4 other ports that marry a couple. Airport operations with seaport operations, to call it one, and seaport. Dominica has DASPA. St. Kitts and Nevis has CASPA. Nevis has coupled, as well as St. Lucia. I believe that those are the 4 that
VA have the Port Authority.
VA has the Port Authority, but that's maritime.
No, the airport as well.
The airport authority, it's combined?
Yeah, it's
combined. So maybe the BVI. But the Air Safety Support International, ASID, that's our regulator for aviation.
Right.
And then the UK Department for Transport, that's our regulator for maritime. So again, even though you have one organization, you have 2 regulators because you have 2 separate divisions, and we try our best not to have one dip over into the other. So we try not to move persons between the ports as best as we can. That was one of the downgrades that we had in 2016 too, that we had to sort of clean up. So there's persons who have dedicated duties and training and certificates for aviation, and persons have the same too for ports. Again, out of 171 persons, the general public may see one or two persons at the port. The ports are 24/7. So there's 3 shifts per day at every port. So even when the port is closed for operations, there's still persons for ASPA who is at the port, who has to be at the port. And if they ever can't be at the port, we have to close for any reason, we have to record and we have to disseminate to the regulator and say, we have a circumstance here, we have to close. And we try to avoid it, because closing means what happened, what was the risk, what and then to open back now is another set of different stuff just to open back again. So we try to make sure that we keep the pendulum swinging.
Okay. Anything from you in closing, Mr. Niles?
Just to say again, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to your listeners. For me, I would like to encourage persons, the general populace, to spend some time to understand that when it comes on to the business of ASPA, it's not to be taken lightly. We want to be able to boast of a state-of-the-art product.
Right.
And back in 2009, when the government made the decision to separate the operation of ASPA, it was from the backdrop that, look, this particular aspect of government needs to be dealt with in a particular way.
Right.
And so the ASPA was formed and developed, and it has its own act, etc. We are going to do our best as an organization, as a board, to be able to ensure that ASPA, as the CEO says, continues to be a viable conduit for the island. And in so doing, we commit our best. We want to commit that the staff at ASPA is going to benefit. We're going to commit that the people of Anguilla, the government, stakeholders, everybody who comes in contact will benefit.
Awesome. I'm happy to hear that. And again, I just want to let you know, we just touched the surface. This is season 2 of Progress Report. We're not going anywhere. I will right now extend an open invitation for you to come back anytime you feel. I know Gleniva has some questions. She sent me some. I didn't even get to touch all today, so I might get a little for that. But she will be able to engage with you on the next round. It has been a pleasure having you on Progress Report, and to our listening audience, go over this another time. Reach out to your radio station, we distribute on WhatsApp, it's on podcast and streaming platforms. Go over this another time, because there were some key things that you touched on that I think people, once they have a deeper understanding of and can be able to even share with some of our colleagues and our friends, they'll understand where ASPA is going, why certain things are changing, what we're doing, and what's in store. And on that note, this has been another excellent episode of Progress Report. Thank you for listening. Thank you to our radio partners who hear the show. Remember, it's on all our local radio stations that hear the show. It's on your streaming platforms. It's everywhere. It's on YouTube. It's on government Facebook. It's distributed by WhatsApp. It's a resource to keep you informed via updates and conversations from the Government Information Service. Thank you.